Wait. So
Yeah.
wait. So what did you pick, by the way?
Oh, I see. Well, if you want just entertainment, I think you'll.
Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. Now here's a bald guy and some Indian. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast. We're obviously joined today by two wonderful guests, and unfortunately still casual. So I guess the guys don't need introductions, but how are you guys? Peter, Nedzo, how are you?
Yeah, can't complain. Life is good at the moment.
Yeah, well, when you ask two autistic people to talk about their lives and how it's going, it's going to go about as well as something that doesn't go very well. So,
Great. It could take 2 seconds or 2 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
It would be funny.
It's about trains.
I should update our intro that says a bald guy and an Indian to just have like the same jazz guy go, and two autistic people this time. Just at the end. Yeah. Right.
I guess that will be taken away. So let's begin. First of all, by the way, the F1 movie, is it out in your part of the world or is it coming out this weekend?
It's this weekend, I think, right?
I'm watching it in 2 days.
It's 25th in your case.
Yeah, I think it said release date 23rd today, but then my cinema's not showing it till Wednesday.
It's 27th in the USA, and Mexico here always
here
maps
as
the US time. So yeah,
Yeah, we have it on 27th in India. By the way, I hate one thing about the whole situation: the way they have this premiere and everything beforehand, and the spoilers are out, the movie reviews are out, and everything is out already.
The race are doing like a two 1 hour podcasts on it. I'm like, I'm not listening to this. That's longer than the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, why are you doing? Again, they're being paid to, so that helps. I mean, we'll be happy to do one.
But I don't know. It's just like, okay, like it's odd to me. Why would you listen to or watch a 2 hour or 1 hour podcast on a movie that's 2 hours long? It's like, surely I can just watch the movie in the same amount of time. Like, I get when it's like, for example, you've got Robert Rodriguez on Joe Rogan talking for 3 hours. That's longer than one of his movies. But it's like, okay, this is giving me insights. But like, if it was the director or one of the actors, it's like, okay, cool. We're hearing the behind the scenes. But like a 1 hour review of a movie is kind of like, I'll just watch the movie.
They just have endless marketing budget, it seems. They're just putting it wherever possible. So reviews, I think a few of you might have come across some of them. Motorsport.com has done, I think, 3 or 4 different reviews of the same thing. Actually, there was one that I wanted to talk about. It was regarding how the female technical director has been portrayed in the movie.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, apparently the name of the article was "We need to talk about women in F1, the movie."
Well, I personally, what I saw is she's not wearing hot dresses and heels, and I thought technical women were supposed to wear hot dresses and heels. What has happened to the world? It's ridiculous.
Lovely, great start.
That article, I think it was Katie, what's her face? I've forgotten her last name. Used to do WTF1. I think she wrote it, but yeah, I mean, I read
Katie, what's her face? And what?
Yeah, it'll come to me in a second.
That comes off the back of me making a joke about hot dresses and heels. This is going to I really hope that this is the podcast episode that blows up, because it will be brilliant. The trailer lost me at one point where I had to switch my mindset to be like, oh, okay, I forgot that this is a movie for like just general entertainment. It's not really for like big F1 fans to, it's not made for us in reality, because he was like, their cars are fast in the straights and we're going to make ours fast in the corners. And I'm like, that's literally the entire point of Formula One. Like this is not like every other sport goes fast in the straights. Like this is, what are you talking about? Like,
it was we are preparing for a dogfight or something. That was what.
We're gonna dogfight, and she's like, "How am I supposed to build a car for that?" And it's like, "This is Formula One. Like, what do you stop?" Like,
and apparently the cars, as usual in the sequences, have like a 12-speed manual transmission, because there's always another gear to go in every straight.
Of course,
Inspired by Fast and Furious.
The good thing is, though, it was backed by Lewis Hamilton, which means the Ferrari will be fast because Lewis doesn't understand the technicals of Formula One. So, although he did build last year's Mercedes, which was very quick for George. So,
for George. Yeah, I think the one thing that I feel they maybe need to set the record straight is that the movie it has two objectives. First is marketing Formula One, bringing as many eyeballs as possible, and second, don't take things too seriously. I think that has to be the whole. That message I think has not come across because it's not only. I think motorsport.com had this specific review that the female character was made to look like a bit of a dumb person in a way. The technical director, because apparently she ended up having some relation with Brad Pitt or something, which is again turning her into an eye candy kind of a thing, which happens in movies, doesn't happen in Formula
It's a
1.
Hollywood movie, like what?
Exactly my point. The main point of the movie is it brings more eyeballs and brings more people to the sport. I think that is how it should be taken, but the way people have just taken it into an entirely different direction, it's foolish. But,
I am proud though of I'm sure that Dutch fans are very proud because a couple of years ago, if you remember, Verstappen said he wasn't showing up to Drive to Survive anymore because it wasn't a real reflection of Formula One, too dramatic and oversold. And yet, I believe he's in this movie quite a bit. So
I think he didn't. I think he didn't come to the premiere.
No, he didn't.
He missed the premiere, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were, I think, 5 or 6 drivers that weren't there, I think. But
Alonso wasn't there. Lance wasn't invited. Who else isn't there? I think...
Lance wasn't invited, did you say?
I was kidding, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah,
Franco Colapinto did show up, which I enjoyed.
He was there.
Yeah.
He was there.
My new favourite driver.
Yeah. I don't know who else was missing. Was there someone else missing?
I don't remember Albon being there in the picture. There's about 30...
Well, again, Albon's quite anonymous anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the group picture, there's like 13 or 14 of them there.
Yeah, I was thinking... Yeah, I don't know. Who else was missing?
I don't know. I'm just trying to think who... I've
Hadjar.
already... We're 3 minutes into the podcast and I've already wound up Hamilton fans and Verstappen fans. So who else can I wind up during this segment?
Lewis was
before we
there.
move on?
So you can't...
No, I know. Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
wind
but
him up.
you will wind up Lewis fans anyway.
Well, I already have.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways, a lot of
Let's
talk
get back
about
to
the whole...
real F1.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, I just got on to the whole thing because we got an email regarding something related to that. But yeah, anyways, let's talk about the Formula One season. First of all, it's been, I think, 10 or 11 races we're done.
11,
Roughly
right?
half of the season is gone by. And well, what's your first...
Sorry,
view?
10. So round 11
races.
is Australia. Or Austria, sorry.
Austria, yeah. So how's it been? I mean, what's your... the first impression of the season, Ned?
The thing is, it's weird because we're in June, we're in June now, and we are 10 races deep into a season, and we're like fully like it's been going for ages. Now, I don't want to sound like an old head because I'm definitely not an old head, but like when I first started watching Formula One in 2012. By the time you got to the Canadian Grand Prix, it was a 7th race, and you felt like it was just getting going. But now it just feels like an avalanche of races. This is the same thing that NASCAR has. Right? NASCAR has a race every single week, and it happens for a long time. And you do sometimes just forget, oh yeah, there's another race this weekend, and it isn't very special at all. That's the problem it is. And although, yes, it can produce more narratives because it can fluctuate, performance can fluctuate and produce unique circumstances that we wouldn't have seen 10, 20, 30 years ago. But I do think it does kind of reduce the specialness of the races because it's just like, oh, there's another race. It's not like, oh, I'm really excited for the next one because you know it's going to come in 1 or 2 weeks' time.
Well, look, very optimistic outlook. I like it.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it started quite good just because this was a season that had a lot of change in terms of new drivers and everyone was, after Lewis announced he was moving to Ferrari last year, everyone was like, can we just skip 24 and go straight to 25 and see how that goes? But now we're settling into a rhythm, and
I mean, we knew how that would go, but
yes, yeah, it's yeah. So from that perspective, some people I'm sure are loving it, but yeah. But at this point, it's I suppose it's settled down a bit, and it's become a bit like, okay, McLaren are going to be fast, this and that, but there's the novelty of thinking, okay, either way, unless they completely implode, we're probably going to have a new champion this year, which is probably going to be Oscar, which is fair play, 3rd season and whatnot. But years like this, when it's the final season before a major technical race, which happens every 3 years now, it always feels a bit like, why are we doing this? Because it's like the cars have reached the development ceilings. There's not much they can to change around with that. And you know that all the teams are just investing in next year, which is, Williams are just permanently thinking, no, we're thinking about the year after next, not this one. So is
Ferrari.
Yeah, there's
Next
still intrigue, but because it's been so, as Neto said, so many races, and a lot of them, it's like, we don't need to go here. The last 3 races are all completely unnecessary, for example. That we just don't. We're not looking forward to all of them. At the beginning of the season, we had to get through Bahrain and Jeddah and Miami and blah, blah, blah. And now we're in the European leg, so it's mostly the good ones. But again, we'll get to the tail end where it's like, we don't need to do Vegas and Qatar and whatnot, especially if the title's wrapped up by then as well.
Well, I can say the optimistic side of that statement is that that's the first time I've heard a British man be happy to be back in Europe for a long time. So that's good.
Interesting. Jason?
A 10-year-old Brexit joke there that fell on dead ears.
Some people understood.
And no one laughed. So I don't know. It's been good. I think the only problem with this season is, unfortunately, it's kind of the season that everyone expected. Not quite as close as we hoped. And the only unexpected thing is that Oscar is basically demolishing Lando. Which I didn't see coming, to be honest, even though I think everyone else did. Hamilton's doing exactly as well as I expected him to do against Leclerc. Max's teammates are doing kind of as well as we expected to do against Max. Mercedes are once again randomly showing up and completely not understanding what the fuck is going on with the car, which gives us some hope that they might not be absolutely dominant next year. And McLaren are ahead of everyone. I don't know. It's been good. It's been better than 2023 or 2020. It hasn't quite. No, 2020. 2022, we had half a season of a title fight. So before Ferrari expectedly threw it away, as is normal and traditional with Ferrari. It's been good. Look, honestly, it's been good. And I'm kind of just enjoying it because I have a feeling next year is going to be absolute dog shit. So I'm kind of just trying to take the good from it at the moment. And it'll be fun to see Oscar win the championship, and it'll be fun to see Max have 33 on the car next year. So,
yeah. It's been decent. I think for me, the biggest disappointment, and I don't know why I did not foresee this happening, it's probably Ferrari, because I thought, stable regulations, they were doing well. I think they had the most points in the second half last season, almost won the championship last year against McLaren. What could go wrong? And then it did. I think that's probably the biggest disappointment for me, because I think if they had probably stuck to that concept, they might have been a bigger competition for McLaren, and with Charles in the car and even Lewis in a better car, we might have had a bit more of a competition than what we are seeing right now. But yeah, even then it's been 10 races, 4 different winners. That's much better than what we've usually seen. So yeah, on that front, it's been fine. I think one thing that I've probably liked is F1's proactiveness when it comes to bringing in being more aggressive when it comes to the tire allocation. So now they don't have to, just the utter nonsense of Pirelli being complacent and looking at last year's overtaking stats, and once the number of overtakes is between 10 to 99, they bring the harder compounds. It's just they want it to be in the double figures, that's it. Which, by the way, they're again doing it in Austria, which is utter lunacy after being very good. So at least once,
I think they should just bring the C6, C5 and C1 for every single race. I think that would be...
Yeah, the thing is, with this new variation, what they've done is they've made teams think. Now, in qualifying as well, there is maybe a possibility that a medium or a soft, you can pick which tire you want to do the final lap. Then there's also the case of having different strategic variants in the races. That's something we've missed a bit. So yeah, at least on that front, it's good. Yeah, even I think maybe Oscar is probably the favorite, but I don't know. I'd probably still pick him, but let's see.
I really want to see Verstappen, and I really want to see Verstappen and Oscar just go toe to toe repeatedly, because I want that, because I just think it's going to be fucking entertaining, because they're both incredibly aggressive when it comes to overtakes and like willing to throw lunges and stuff like that, but they're both completely mentally different. Like Max is usually relatively aggressive but calm, but when he has his red mist moments, I just don't see Oscar having those, and I really want to see both of them push to the limit, just because I can imagine Verstappen going mental and Oscar's on the radio just like, well, that was a bit wild. I just want to see that happen. Yeah.
I actually went back and looked at the team radio once Lando bumped into Oscar in Canada. Nothing, radio silence. Not even a single word.
Yeah, and Oscar just completely calm.
Once a teammate bumps into you and basically he crashes out, puts your race in potential jeopardy.
But it's even like when Oscar wins a race, it's just like, well, good job, team. Like, I've never heard him go, yes, yeah. It's just like, oh, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably realised after a couple of corners, okay, I'm fine. The car's still running. He's out. Great. What reason is there to complain, kind of thing?
Oscar is like the F1 modern equivalent of, is it Napoleon that was like, don't wake me up unless there's bad news. So he's just like, oh, well, it's fine. Just move on.
Yeah. By the way, one biggest surprise for you, just in general, when we talk about the first 10 races, one major surprise. Ned?
I'd say the fact that Albon hasn't truly bottled everything. And I know we said one, but another one probably equal to that is just how bad Franco Colapinto was to start his tenure, and now how good he's actually become in Canada.
Yeah. Peter?
I'm trying to remember what my predictions were at the beginning of the season, but I think to have Lawson and Tsunoda be so abominably bad would probably be the main thing that's caught me out. Even by, Red Bull's second driver status, this is like new levels of just incompetence, basically.
Yeah, I would say on that, just before a big surprise, I would say on that, it's kind of interesting that I think Tsunoda and Lawson both being this terrible after Perez, Gasly, Albon, it kind of just proving that Albon was correct in that, like, the setups that they go to for Max are just incredibly extreme. Like, the way he wants to drive is just incredibly extreme. And I wonder, like, will he be able to have any teammate who succeeds? Say, if he moves to Mercedes, like, if they actually push the car to where he wants, is it the same situation? That would be interesting. Because it does feel like Albon's correct. It's just like, look, the setups are extreme, to get it working.
Well, I mean, same thing happened with Benetton, with Michael, of course. They could, like, Herbert and Verstappen and everyone, they couldn't do anything with it, but Michael could when those cars were not brilliant. Like,
because like, we know that, like, Tsunoda, Lawson, Perez, Albon, Gasly, like, we know they're not shit drivers. Like, they're quite good drivers, So it has to be the car, because they can't be that far off all the time, I mean, I know Max fans will say, well, he's a second faster than everyone. It's like, no, he's not. Like, just shut the fuck. This is Formula 1. Anyway, biggest surprise. Alpine's not a surprise. It's as incredibly messed up as I expected it to be. Hamilton being off, no, not a surprise. Max's teammates, not a surprise. I think just Lando being so abominably terrible compared to Piastri this year is surprising. Because I didn't think he would be this bad.
It's just the mental midget thing, isn't it? When things get tough, he's just...
But I thought
rise
he
to
would...
the occasion.
Yeah, and I genuinely thought, like, okay, he has the pace. Like, the one thing... I know you can complain a lot about Lando, but he has got the pace. He is a very quick driver. And all of that shit that came up last year against Max, I thought he would fix in the off-season and come back strong. So to not even be beating Piastri now... when he's been at the team for so long, he has the pace. That is kind of surprising. But I know there's a lot of people who listen to this, especially the Max fans who don't like me saying bad things about Max, will now come into the comments. Everyone saw that coming, you prick. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah.
For me, I mean,
Lando,
Yeah, go for it.
So I was good, but because of Lando, because he gets praise from his fan base of mostly teenage girls for being so open and upfront about, like, mental health. health issues and all of that, whilst also being very vague about what exactly it is at the same time, because it could be almost anything. It could be schizophrenia, it could be anorexia, whatever. But yeah, he is that the other drivers don't do that, and maybe you shouldn't really dwell on those kind of insecurities from a sports psychology perspective, because the other drivers don't seem to have this problem of just everything collapsing around them, particularly when they're in a car which is obviously competitive and obviously drivable as well. Because with the Red Bull guys, it's like, because with the Red Bull guys, it's like, well, we're fighting one-handed basically because this car is built for Max or whatever. But with him, it's like last year, there were the odd moments where we saw the Oscar's potential in terms of the way he drove in Azerbaijan and the move he pulled on him in Monza, but otherwise it was like he can't sustain the race pace because he doesn't have the tyre management experience. But now it's really hard for Lando to kind of make inroads into him, other than in Monaco, where you win it on qualifying and overtaking doesn't happen.
Yeah. By the way, he's mostly messed up almost every qualifying this season, apparently. I was taking a look at his season, and it's been about, in 10 races there have been, whoa. Are you guys hearing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nets. What's going on?
I didn't see mine pop up. I
thought it was you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyways.
Great.
Good job. Great podcast content. Yeah, I was just trying, just looking at Lando's season that has been until now, and there have been 10 qualifying sessions, out of which I think it's 5 or 6 qualifyings. Who the fuck is doing that? Anyways,
it's definitely yours, because it only has you up when that noise comes up.
Is it?
Yeah.
There's actually no one in my house. Is there someone?
Gas leak. Run.
Anyways, coming back to it, out of the 10 races, there have been 6 qualifyings where he's just fucked up his final lap. So when that is happening, it's been a complete... Once you're doing that, you're not really maximizing the very basic, the criteria to actually compete at the front. And it's been a bit strange. And a lot of people have tried to compare him with Damon Hill. What's your take on the whole thing? Is he the modern day Damon Hill? Nedza?
Yes, he is. Let's look at it. So Damon Hill was a British driver who spent a good amount of time in the fastest car on the grid against a generational talent who was definitely the greatest of his generation, arguably the greatest. Well, Max isn't arguably the greatest of all time just yet, but he will be up there in that conversation soon. And he just flounders. Like Hill, 1993, of course, he had a couple of good races, but overall, even though Prost had his worst season of his career, in my opinion, he was still miles worse. 1994, he gets slapped about by Senna, and then when Coulthard comes in, and Coulthard was a rookie, so there's no competition, and then Mansell comes in, last race of the season, out-qualifies him by 6/10, and I do believe that if Mansell had been given the seat when Senna died and had instantly taken over, that he would have won the title. That he would have just managed to win that race.
Considering the amount of meddling that the FIA did, maybe yes, but if Mansell was competitive, then the meddling might not have even been there, isn't it?
Maybe that's a good point as well. Yeah. 1995, Hill was just utterly, probably one of the worst in my entire life ever. Well, not in my entire life because I wasn't even born yet, but you get what I mean. And then in 1996, he took for him to have a rookie teammate. He took for him to have a rookie teammate who, although he had a lot of testing experience, he was just kind of and didn't have a good F1 career in his own right. Yeah, and that's how he won. Don't get me wrong, Hill's is annoying because Hill's peak moments, Hungary 97, not Adelaide 94, Suzuka 94, they proved that he could match and beat the best of his era on his day. But the rest of it is just kind of what are we looking at? And it's the same with Lando, because I mean, I don't think Lando's had any Hungary 97S performances or Suzuka 94S performances, but he's had a couple of dominant wins. Zandvoort last year, Singapore last year, though he nearly twatted into war about 8,000 times. And I don't know if Abu Dhabi was dominant. I can't exactly remember, but he's had those moments where he's kind of done a 9.5 out of 10. But he's just
Australia this season,
he's just so average or mediocre.
Yeah. Peter?
I mean, when Damon got shat on by his teammates. It was Prost and Senna. It wasn't Piastri. I mean, other than Frentzen, I suppose. But that, that lends a comparison because with Damon Hill, it was the whole he wanted to give up, and the whole mental fatigue thing. That it was a kind of mental issue. Not in that way, but like mental health issue or just mentality. You can make the comparison, but Lando, like in the past, he has had a lot of good moments, particularly like 2020, 2021. He had a lot of very good qualifyings and the whole last lap Lando stuff. And again, Damon Hill has had like Hungary 97, Suzuka 94, Australia 95, blah blah blah, and crashing into people, and they're both. They were both known for being self-deprecating, I think, as well. But Damon was doing it in a less like serious way than Lando, because Lando's always like, "I'm just not good enough," whereas Damon kind of joked that he wasn't, but also he was having to fight. Well, three. It was starting
generational talents.
Prost, Senna, and then Michael, and all of that. So there was a lot to fight in just a 7-year stint, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I can see the comparisons, but the difference is that Damon Hill won a world championship, and I don't think Lando will. So I think it ends there. Yeah, I just don't see, like, unless McLaren are dominant next year and the car suits Lando better and Oscar can't get on top of it for some reason, I just don't see. I think he's got the problem of, even if he's faster than Oscar now, it seems like whenever it comes to pressure points, he just constantly falls apart. And I don't know, it's weird because Lando has consistently got better over his career. It just seems like he can't fix this issue because it's been going on for essentially 12 months now of just continually, like, whenever the pressure gets high, he just falls apart. And now that pressure is high every Q3 session because Oscar is right there. So, this should be the season where he kind of walks away with a championship in reality, and that hasn't happened. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a tough one for Lando to swallow, isn't it? Because unless he can turn this around and win this championship, it's just not going to happen for him because he's...
Yeah, if he loses this one, it's just similar to the Vettel-Weber thing, right? Unless you win... If Weber had won in 2010, he would have gotten that boost and he would have taken it from there. But Vettel sneaked it through, and then the level he rose to after that, Weber couldn't really keep up. And I think for me, when it comes to the comparison between Lando and Damon, I don't think I ever considered Damon to having that elite level pace and performance. That I think there are occasions where I tend to associate Lando with that. I think the races in 2020, the Austria race, the last lap Lando thing, and then there were races in 2021. I think there was a time when there was a point in the championship where he was third in the championship ahead of both Bottas and Perez. I think it was around Austria in 2021, and that was a time when Red Bull and Mercedes were dominantly ahead of the rest of the pack. It's just, I've not seen a driver that has, and I think I even when I wrote a post on X for the same thing as well, that when it comes to checking that ticking all those check boxes, he's brilliant in the wet weather. He's brilliant when it comes to race pace. The management is there. The performance more or less is there. There's only one factor where he just cannot get on top of, and that is the whole thing when it comes to his head. And Rosberg has pointed it out again and again. And I think it was probably the most significant marker was in Barcelona, where the Q3 lap is there and Rosberg is in commentary, and T1 Lando is just he just overshoots the braking point, and at that very moment Rosberg said he's pushing too hard. And from that moment, at every particular, you can say, be it the braking point, be how he's approaching every corner, Rosberg is pointing it out again and again and again. He's pushing too hard. And it's just, maybe it's the insecurity, maybe whatever it is. The problem is literally in his head. And I mean, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know how to get on top of it. But if he's able to do that, he can beat Oscar. But I don't know if he can actually get on top of that. That's the main thing. And Damon, for me, I don't think he had the issue of being mentally weak, because if he was mentally weak in 1994, he wouldn't have been in contention against Michael, in Adelaide, and he probably would not have beaten Villeneuve in 97 if the mental thing was the main issue. I think Hill was not an elite level talent when it came to putting together performances. For Lando, the problem is, if this was rallying, he would probably be top 2, top 3. But this is not rallying. You have to race, and he just cannot. That's where the main problem comes in.
I think the simple fact is, if you were to just base things on pure, just out and out pace, Lando would be up there with like the top 3 or 4 drivers on the grid. Yeah. But unfortunately, it takes a lot more than that. Yeah. So
I think with the comparison with Hill as well is that like Schumacher is a generational talent, and obviously Max is, but Oscar he's good but not really generational. But the thing about Schumacher is that he was very good at playing mind games, and he also had very dirty tactics, which is always going to mess things up. Whereas Oscar, as well as being completely just stone cold and soulless, is squeaky clean on track and just doesn't really. He drives like you're not there, rather than like he's doing everything to push you off and all of that. So it's not the same kind of challenge, because Lando is sabotaging himself rather than getting sabotaged by his opponent.
Yeah. Oscar's Raikkonen, basically.
Yeah, 2012 Kimi Raikkonen rather than 2005 Kimi Raikkonen.
Well, wasn't there a thing people they're trying to get the nickname Ice Boy into circulation or something?
Oh no,
I saw that.
no, thank you.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that. And even just the collision in Canada, that same move Lando pulled off on Oscar in 2022, if I'm not wrong. But it's just that when the pressure is high, he overshot. And he allowed Oscar, just gave him enough opportunity to, come back and have the inside. It's these small moments where he continues to lose again and again, and beat against Oscar or Max. And I don't know, if somehow he ends up being comfortable with the car and has a 10th or a couple of tenths buffer on Oscar, maybe he can just go ahead and win. But other than that, I really find it hard, because right now it's within a 10th between the two. And when push comes to shove, you always are going to back Oscar. And I think I'm probably not the only one who, when I was watching that battle, I could almost sense something was going to happen, and Lando was going to end up with the short end of the stick. I'm probably not the only one who actually thought that, wasn't it?
I didn't think it would end that way, but I did think, I was like, Lando's not getting past him here. He's going to shut the door like in an aggressive way. I thought it would be a case of he would put Lando like into the grass or off into the gravel somewhere. Lando would survive, but he basically wouldn't get by, and that would be the start. I didn't expect him just to drive into the back of Oscar.
I mean, you can call me an armchair expert, but if he'd gone to the right, he would have been on the outside for turn 1, but then he could have held it and had the inside for turn 2, and that would have been enough to get ahead. Because when the McLarens did that in 2011, they at least had the excuse that there was pouring rain and just no visibility.
Low visibility, yeah.
Instead of blazing sunshine and that.
Yeah. And at least they went on to win the race, which kind of makes up for some of the issues.
Via domestic terrorism, we have to add. But yeah, Button did win that race.
Yeah.
the better McLaren driver won.
Oh.
Well, he did. I mean, Jensen was the better driver then. Anyways,
well, that season certainly, yeah. I mean, Lewis was a train wreck in 2011.
Yeah.
So,
there's going to be a lot of angry fans, because they're used to me saying stuff like this, but an upstanding YouTuber like Peter Brook,
Hamilton was too busy crashing into South Americans that year. He was.
Yeah.
Massa and Maldonado.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're crashing into Maldonado, that's quite an achievement. There's a crash that involves Maldonado, and you're at fault. You've done something wrong, especially when you bring out a red flag.
And he ended up being at fault for basically all of their collisions as well. Yeah. Whereas in every other case, Maldonado was the one at fault with more or less every other driver, but just not Lewis.
I'll have to make a spreadsheet about this.
Anyway, he would have been banned, by the way, if we had the whole F1 penalty point system in 2011. I'm pretty sure he would have been banned.
He'd have been a race ban at some point,
Yeah, he was involved in 3 collisions alone in Monaco. Admittedly, the one with Al-Jaswari and co wasn't his fault, but Maldonado and Massa, they both were, so...
Yeah. Who would have replaced him? I don't know if they had a reserve back then. Actually, no. De La Rosa was still the McLaren reserve, because they got him, loaned him over to Sauber.
Yeah.
So I guess it would have been De La Rosa. Yeah.
Gary Paffett might be, right? I think
Kevin Magnussen.
Olivier Turvey, right? Even he was there.
And he's still there for some reason.
He's still there.
I think I think Will Stevens is still like a simulator driver as well.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a really odd system.
So strange.
Yeah.
I miss Scott
Davidson,
Speed.
Right? Oh,
He's still Mercedes simulator driver. Or was
he's
very
basically the
recently.
Brackley. He's the Brackley's simulator driver, isn't he? Anthony Davidson, because he was there when the team was Honda. So he's basically the entire thing has changed, and he's still there, and he's still doing the job.
Yeah, he's been there since the BAR days.
Yeah,
since like 2000, I think. Yeah,
I think it was 2005 or 2006. Yeah, 2005 Monaco Grand Prix where Jensen was banned for the whole thing. Where basically BAR was banned, and Jensen was in the commentary, and he talked about how important Anthony Davidson has been for the team. So he's been there since 2005. We are into 2025. Great job. I mean, talking about job security, that's something.
That's a good segue.
Yeah,
into
talking
George
about
and
job
Max.
security. Yeah, talking about job security and Brackley. I think it's again there are reports, but fuck the reports because none of them are actually worth the salt right now. George versus Max, and I mean, yeah, we've had Jason's view on it quite a few times. If you are Toto Wolff, the boss of Mercedes, other than the fact that you're a billionaire, you have a choice to make between Max and George. Who are you going for?
Piastri.
I'd go for Max. To be honest, I would, because choosing the second driver would actually be harder than choosing the first driver, I think. Because if you bring Max in, you have to choose, do you say to George, we don't care about the Mercedes junior system, we don't care that you've kept loyal, we don't care that you've basically been the catalyst for everything we've done since 2021. We don't care about that. We're gonna replace you, and you can go off to Aston Martin, or you can spend your career trying to flaunt around midfield teams, or try and get yourself into some other top team. Or you can keep Kimi Antonelli, and although he's been doing really well because he's been nurtured into that seat and he's been given a car that's reasonably well at handling, and it's not got any ulterior characteristics, and he's not had much pressure put on him. If he was to go against Max Verstappen now or next year, all of that progress, all of that stuff he's built up would just go out the window, because he'd be decimated by Verstappen. He would be, because Verstappen would build the car in his direction. Kimi wouldn't have the authority to be able to say, no, we're not going in that direction. We're going to have a balanced car. So I think the way that you could make it work and have the best overall outcome is to say, have Max and George in the same team, because then George won't let the car be terrible, or he won't let it be directed towards Max's thing, and then you loan Antonelli out to another Mercedes-powered team, and that would only be if he'd accept that. If he was to accept to go to Williams, for example, if Sainz doesn't improve, or if they just want to get rid of Albon because he's a bit stinky, or he could even go to but you get what I mean. But you get what I mean. I was going to say Aston Martin, and I realised they were going to go to Honda, so that's not an avenue you can go to. But that's the only way. That's the best case scenario. But then that's also really, really, really short term, because Antonelli's not going to want to stay at Williams long term, and Max, unless he retires imminently, Max and George are set for the next 10 years. So you've got a bit of a problem there that you'd just be kicking the ball further down the road.
Don't you? I mean, how stable? Not stable. Sorry. How inflammable is a George Russell Max Verstappen lineup going to be on a scale of 0 to 10?
2007 McLaren, but.
Worse.
Yeah.
They'll basically take Toto with them I mean, look, it is possible that this could happen, but there's a high possibility that Kimi Antonelli has already signed an extension until 2027, which is what the reports are stating. But
I'm pretty sure of that as well, from someone I've spoken to. I'm pretty sure,
Yeah, even if we assume that that's not the case, Max and George as a lineup, and that's going to be combustible in so many ways. I mean, yeah. Peter, what's your take?
It's a tricky one, because like Max doesn't play by the rules, but George does. Because George is kind of a bit of a snitch and a teacher's pet, and he's always going to be the one like, oh, what's the homework for this week? You forgot to give it to us, as that kind of guy. But Max is like, he doesn't care how he beats you. He's just going to want to beat you. And so the two together doesn't really mesh in a team, because you'll just get George complaining that Max is doing everything wrong and he's not playing by the rules or whatever. But Max alone can carry a team by himself if he needs to, if the car's good enough. It's just that they clearly don't like each other, so unless your whole objective is just drama and PR and stuff for Drive to Survive, there's not a huge reason to put them as teammates together, because it's going to be really hard to actually, well, create a good working environment, but also have the two personalities clashing so much. If that Max is going to want the car to work for him, and if it doesn't, he's going to like throw a hissy fit, and George is going to complain if he doesn't like the car, and he'll just say, "Oh, well, they're favouring Max and doing all of this." That it doesn't.
There's a certain Jos Verstappen also in the background. I mean, peace-loving guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's less. Well, I suppose we don't see him at races so much anymore. I think he's been sort of, I don't know if it's unofficially banned from the paddock or whatever, but I think that entire Red Bull sort of trinity, I don't know what you'd call it, is sort of falling apart a bit, because Helmut Marko, people listen to him a bit less. He doesn't have a microphone in his face constantly anymore. We don't hear much from Christian, but then there's also the reports they might just get rid of him, because the whole team is falling. I mean, you quickly realise how much Adrian Newey was kind of holding that team together. But then that's the case of anything. At the end of the day, it's the car that comes
Rob Marshall
first and foremost in that. So, yeah, I don't know. But the Red Bull's going to go downhill, and Max he'll either move or retire, because he constantly gets fed up with everything, particularly the media. But there are loads of drivers in the past that, like Kimi and others, that hate having to do interviews, particularly when they're asked very kind of obtuse questions by the British media, especially as well. Yeah.
Wait. So what did you pick, by the way?
Oh, I see. Well, if you want just entertainment, I think you'll throw them together. But if the objective for Mercedes is to win both championships, then they probably should keep George. They could win the drivers maybe with Max, but it's gonna. I mean, particularly if he had Antonelli as his teammate, Antonelli's going to be utterly hopeless in that kind of environment, and would just kind of have the mental strength of a lentil against Max. So
Yes.
It's just like I get why people say you should hire Max. I understand that that's how Formula One works as well. World champions just get the seats that they want. This is always the case. And I get that Max is an upgrade on George in many ways. I just feel like, as I said last week, the upgrade on George is not massive. Like, it's not like you're taking, Max over a Tsunoda, for example, or, it's not like you're taking someone who's going to be 5 or 6 tenths faster, even though a lot of that's to do with the car building Tsunoda. But like, my point is, it's not like a Lewis Bottas situation, It's not like a Max Perez situation. This is I'm trying to think of the way you'd put this. Like, this is a Lewis Rosberg situation, and even that is a bit of a slam, because Rosberg.
This is probably you can say,
it's closer.
Michael Mika Hakkinen situation.
Yeah, or an Alonso Lewis 2007 situation where either of them would win the championship in the right car if you put them there. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, and I know. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, especially if you're cheating in the background as well. So like, it just feels to me like the upgrade isn't worth it, because, and I said this last week, and I know it annoyed some Max fans, but I'm sorry, it's the truth. If next year Mercedes does have the fastest car, regardless of whether it's George or Max in that seat, either of them's winning the championship. Like, George has shown this year that if you give him the right car, he will win a championship. He doesn't have the mental problems that Lando has. Sorry, almost slip of the tongue there. And he's a very quick driver, and he's very adaptable. So at the end of the day, like, no matter what the car is like we saw George in the Williams, we saw him in a difficult to drive Mercedes. The only time he's had any issues was for a few races in 2023 after they dramatically changed the car. He had some issues. So like, Will George win a championship in the fastest car? Yes. Can he race wheel to wheel? Yes. Is Max Verstappen a better driver? Yes. But is the difference dramatic enough that you would drop him and then take the downside of ruining your prodigy that you're training in the other car as well? Like, it just seems to me that you're basically destroying an entire future of one driver that Toto clearly believes massively in for a short-term small upside. I get that Toto's probably going to take that short-term small upside because the big upside of it is you completely destroy one of your competitors. Like, if Max goes, that's easily just an excuse to get rid of Horner. Then the board runs Red Bull, and Red Bull never come back and turn into a new version of Ferrari. But at the end of the day, that, as I said last week, that downside would make a lot more sense in 2021. Right now, Red Bull's probably not going to be competitive next year anyway. So you're kind of taking a chess piece off of a board that is finished anyway. The game's up for them anyway. So it's kind of pointless. I don't know. Being pragmatic on it, I just don't think it's a good decision for Toto. Unless he thinks that they're not going to be competitive next year and he's thinking we need a driver who can kind of pull a shitty car up the grid a little bit because we can just like go crazy in one direction. But I don't think Toto thinks they'll be in that situation, so what's the point? That's my view.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest question mark is just around Max's future, because I think, look, he is getting fed up, but the problem with almost every F1 driver is around this age they all get fed up. Lewis was quite famous in saying that he won't be racing in his 40s. He spoke about Michael when he said that, but he's racing. Alonso, I think it was in 2006 or 2005, where I think when he signed the contract with McLaren, he said that this is going to be my last contract. And
that worked out well.
I mean, that was not even his last contract with McLaren. So.
Yeah, exactly. And he's driven for 35% of all F1 history now, I think the stat was the other day.
Yeah.
So, which is wild.
So that is another one. Then the problem that they have is when it comes to Max, even though he's cringing a bit right now, while what happened with Lewis or Alonso is, what happened with Alonso is he wanted to prove himself when he had Vettel and Lewis. So that's what pushed him again and again and again. Max is a different cookie when it comes to that. He's very, very self-assured in terms of, I'm better than everyone else. That is his thought process. So he has set the date of 2028, and I think he's going to stick to it. After 2028, he's probably going to take some time off. He'll race in endurance, weekend of the series. He's probably going to realize, precisely, because like everyone else, he'll realize, first of all, the grass is not greener on the other side. The money is much less. And while it might be fun, these are not the best cars in the world. They are still in Formula One. So they all come back because of these very reasons, and he will as well. But by 2028, he'll probably be done. And when he's negotiating and signing a contract with Toto, that 2028 deadline is going to be there. So it's probably a 2026 till 2028. That's the contract he's signing. And for Toto to have this much conviction that, okay, I'll have Max for 3 years, at the same time, he's burning George because, look, that's a bit of a betrayal because that's not a reciprocating of trust that George has put in the team. George is gone. Those 3 years, if he sticks with Kimi's done. Because I've seen a lot of things with Kimi. He's fast, he's talented, his racecraft is fine, there's no such issue as such. There's one problem that I think I've seen, and I think that's one major difference that's in Kimi when I compare him to the likes of Max, Alonso, Lewis, Vettel, and it's just he's maybe a bit too soft. Let's put it this way. I don't see the steely determination that I saw from a Lewis, from a Max, in the way not only in the way they conduct themselves, but the whole approach that they have to racing. Kimi is a bit more laid back, and I don't see him asserting himself as much as I've seen other drivers do. These top elite talents do. I think that's where maybe when a Max joins the team, the entire team is his. And Kimi might be left to fend for himself. And at 18, 19, I think that's too early. So yeah, that might, you take a look at that, and I just don't think it makes any sense. I think I'd rather go with George, because look, we don't know in 2026 if we've seen Oscar do this, by the way, this season. That couple of tenths of deficit that he had in qualifying to Lando, he's pretty much covered it. Kimi is still improving. By next season, new cars, everything's different. He might be able to adapt a bit quicker than George. And the pace is there in terms of talent. Everything is there. He might be the faster Mercedes. So we don't know.
Look at
in
Canada.
which direction it goes.
I mean, his performance in Canada was just felt no pressure. Max was right there alongside him. Didn't even, he got off the line quicker than Max and just held the whole thing. Even safety car controlled
Fended off Oscar,
everything.
by the way.
Yeah.
Fended off Oscar in the later stages, and he did it quite well.
You could say, Toto has said it, George is probably one of the top 2 drivers this year.
Yeah.
So, I just, from George's point of view, if he does get dropped, you've got to feel absolutely betrayed as well, because literally there's nothing more you can do right now. You are maximizing that car to at every weekend. So, he can't look back and go, well, maybe I should have. He's no, he did everything he could and still gets dropped. I know that, again, I know that's Formula One, but the upside to me just doesn't seem worth it for the downsides that you're bringing in, personally.
With Max as well, I've always had this feeling that he never really wanted to do any of this. That he's been just, he's been doing this. He's been racing literally his entire life, and it's about just being pressured into it by his dad, living vicariously through him. And out off the track, all he does is sim racing and testing, and he doesn't know any different. And because of the way that there's a lot of it is about wanting to please your father and get his approval, and the complaints about wanting to leave eventually. It all sounds very similar to Lance Stroll. The difference is that Max is actually good, but it's just there's always been that sense of it. It was never fully his choice, in the same way that most of the drivers, particularly the ones whose dads were never racing drivers, that they obviously just wanted to do this and become the first generation in their family to do racing.
Yeah.
He might get burned out early, right? Even I feel that. Plus, look, the number of races are 24 right now, and
he's just had a kid as well.
It's not decreasing in any which way.
Because, I mean, back in the day, you might have had 16, 17 races, but then they did so much testing. But the testing maybe doesn't... It will wear you out, but it's not the same mental pressure as the racing. Yeah. And you're not having to do media commitments and everything else, and probably
that's
travel
the biggest
as much.
problem, honestly. The media commitment is the main issue, because honestly, it's not even the media. And again, being from that side of the world right now, I think the biggest problem is the number of restrictions that are posed on the drivers. The media sessions are dull. They are boring as fuck. And the reason why they're boring is because everything is PR curated, and I can sit there, I can listen to the question. I know what the question is going to be. I can listen to the answer, and I know the answer, what it is going to be. You don't have the likes of Montoya, truly, to a certain extent, Ralf Schumacher, who tend to speak their minds. There's no one who does that.
They don't even play around anymore.
Trained so much. Yeah.
They used to throw water at each other and move the mics away from each other, joke with each other, insult each other, and now it's just
Remember, there used to be special viral moments from these.
There were so many. Yeah.
And now
since Daniel Ricciardo's left, they're just all gone, because he was the last one that kind of went to play around a bit.
Yeah.
Vettel was very good at it. Vettel didn't give a shit, and he'd say things. And he used to even get Hamilton to banter a bit. And now Hamilton seems completely uninterested. He's too busy at the Met Gala. So there's just no one doing anything anymore. It just doesn't.
It's dull.
And now when Lando does, even when Lando says things now, the response from people annoys me, to be honest, because the response is, should be, that's not very professional. It's
the
fuck
problem
off.
The bigger problem is when Lando was not in one of the top seats, when he used to say these things, they were taken as jokes. Now you have the entire army of Lewis Hamilton fans and Verstappen fans. They're just itching to get pissed off, and I think that is also one of the bigger problems, because the fan bases have become so reactive that anything one says, it's taken into a wrong context, even when it is not said. I mean, just look at the entire thing about Lando saying in 2020 that he should be winning because he only has 2 drivers to beat. I mean, that comment still plays in 2025. What are we doing?
The other thing is just that this is, I think this is a generation of drivers that actually listen to shit on social media quite a bit now as well.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, the last generation of drivers, like, Vettel was not on fucking Instagram going, do you see what these people said about me? Like, you know, he was too busy listening to where the bees were. Like, he didn't give a shit. And Schumacher, for example, before that, certainly wouldn't have given a shit about what some teenagers were saying online. Like, so I think this is the first generation of drivers as well that actually, you know, like, you know, I don't read the comments. I really wish the drivers would take that approach as well.
Yeah, it's...
Sorry,
it's
I
just
do read the
everything
comments. Please insult me in the comments.
Yeah, it's just the entire... Everything is very PR curated in terms of how they... And again, because I'm covering all these things, you can see the similarities. Every driver, be it a Max or a Charles or a Leclerc or... whoever.
Max or a Charles
or a Lewis or Gasly, all these drivers, first of all, they all have these supermodel girlfriends. All of them are hanging out in Monaco. Everything is pretty much curated in terms of these are the messages that are going to go out. This is your...
But are they happy?
GTA.
No. Do you know who's
Precisely.
happy? You, the fat bastards at home watching them. That's who's happy.
I think I think it comes with age as well. The older drivers tend to care less about what the media thinks, and it's partly just because they've been doing it for ages, but also because when you get older and you've been in the game for a while, you're given a bit more freedom, particularly contractually as well. Because Lewis has had this in that when Mercedes 2018, every non-race weekend he was doing, you know, fashion shows and shit in America and that kind of thing. And he, like, when it comes to the media, I mean, you know, he's always been the one that speaks out about politics and his views on that, which
He used to. He's shut up now.
Yeah, I mean, in his eyes, it probably sounded radical, but it was all actually very regime-approved stuff at the time. But it's
100%. That's why he keeps his mouth shut right now.
Yeah, but it's but it's the rest of them. I think also the media commitments are really, and the sponsorship. It's quite overwhelming, even compared to any other sport. Because like footballers and anything else, they're not. It's not like every day there's some kind of commitment they have to do with their sponsors, or that when they're doing that, like the social media tat, as I call it, when they're doing those random games and challenges that they put on the YouTube channel, or whatever. That's all become a thing, and you're very curious on what you have to say, but I think also they're all very conscious when it comes to their fan bases, because so much of it is teenage girls, especially with McLaren. They get offended they get offended by just about everything, and so you have to say stuff that's like, will teenage girls think this is funny or think this is acceptable or something?
I mean, the hilarious thing was the same post that I'd put up with Lando on both X and on Threads. It basically, the brief was, Lando is brilliant. He has almost everything when it comes to being a world champion, other than the fact that he's a mental midget. So now that post, there are segments of it which offended the Verstappen fans. Then there are segments which offended the Hamilton fans, and then there were segments which offended the Lando Norris fans. So the fact that I said he was brilliant in wet weather, that offended both Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton fans. And then the fact that I said that he was a mental midget, that offended the Norris fans. And that's just how it goes. Everyone is just looking for reasons to be offended. When I wrote an entire 400-piece thing, and there are far too many glowing things which I've actually written about the guy. And even then,
I did find it funny after Canada that there were Lando fans that were like, no, I can't do this anymore. He is just garbage. I can't. I have to go off this train now. Because no other none of the other fan bases, it's always someone else's fault, especially with Lewis. It's
I hate the zero-sum game, by the way, in Formula One. I really hate it, which is where, like, for example, I'll compliment one driver, right, where I'm like, oh, this was a really good performance by Lando, for example. And Max fans immediately, what, do you think Max is shit? And I'm like, at what point did I just say that? Like, what are you talking? Like, basically, you compliment one driver means that, oh, you're downing the other driver. And it's like, no, like, both can be brilliant. You know, I kept saying this last year. Like, just both drivers can be great. It doesn't have to be one or the other, you know?
That's the funny thing, by the way. There was one comment, I think I showed it to you, Jason, as well. It's just because Lando is closeted gay. That's why he cannot perform under pressure. What the fuck is going on?
I don't know. I think it's a ridiculous statement. I mean, at the end of the day, I like when people, go on these rants and they're like, "Oh well, gay people can't do X and Y." It's like gay people do the most manly thing ever. They fuck other men. Yeah,
I've seen
they're too. They do that because they're too much man for any woman to handle, and only other men can handle it. Yeah.
Coming back to Formula One. Yeah.
I'm glad we're not monetized yet.
Yeah. Good job. This is not going to help in any which way.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah. By the way, talking about, we touched on it a bit, Red Bull and its future. First of all, the whole thing with Red Bull being too dependent on Max Verstappen. Where do you think the entire dynamics actually move towards when it comes to Red Bull? Because right now they are still, they're right now an outside contender when it comes to the drivers' championship. What happens in the future? Where do you think the whole train is actually heading, Ned?
This is the thing, because we saw last year they lost Newey, and that was obviously a big catalyst for their form. Almost instantly, in fact, very much instantly, fell off a cliff. And ever since then, I mean, we mentioned it earlier that Newey was kind of holding that team together. Horner and Marco have just been at each other's throats. And aside from the Thai investors who don't really have any sort of public image, there's no one who's reining either of them in. There's no one who's like trying to balance between the two of them. And essentially, I think that unless there is a pecking order established, which even if there is one established, it's not like Marco or Horner's going to accept being a number two. The team's just going to combust internally. And I think Max going would be a second catalyst that would just be like, well, what are we doing this for then? Because even if they have a lineup of, let's say, Tsunoda and Lindblad, or Lawson and Lindblad, like, don't get me wrong, Lindblad's a great young talent or Hadjar even in there. They're all great drivers in their own right, and some of the Hadjar and Lindblad are potential future champions. But like at the moment, they wouldn't be groundbreaking. They wouldn't be groundbreaking, and that would just be like the Pierre Vacher, one of the best minds in Formula One. All the other guys who work at that team, they were like, well, what are we actually doing this for? Why don't we go off to either get Saudi money from Aston Martin, or go to Ferrari or Mercedes or McLaren, where the entire team is held together rather than just being held together by a bit of glue. It's just...
You talked about Ferrari. You mentioned Ferrari in terms of the team being held together.
Okay. Maybe you want to go there for the allure. Maybe you want to go there to tick a box because you're like 40 years old and not going to do anything. But it's down that road. I'd still say it's better than Red Bull. Also, as long as you're Italian and you go, as long as you're not Italian and you go to Ferrari, you'll be competent. It's fine.
Definitely putting a warning disclaimer like this may hurt Hamilton fans at the start of this podcast, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered.
The British bias is crazy in this podcast. Anyway.
But you get what I mean. Like it can either go to the point where Max stays and they implode, or Max leaves and they just implode quicker.
So they're basically going to implode. Either way. Yeah. Peter?
I think they need to basically do like a factory reset and just pretend it's 2005 next year, because it's like, oh, we'll just go back to when we were just a midfielder, or maybe even in 2008, because we get hints at points where the RB or whatever it's called might actually be better because the drivers can actually drive it, is the thing, and I think people have always found it controversial, this system of having a B team, because there's been unofficial examples of this in the past, but it's usually been connected to having the same engine, not that like this is literally they're our wingmen and they'll help us out when we need them, and we have these driver exchange and whatnot. That it's a bizarre kind of system, and I feel like that has to go eventually, particularly because the junior team is in a shambles because they clearly don't know what they're doing in terms of who they hire and who they promote and then demote 2 or 3 races later. But if Red Bull were to completely sell the team and it gets bought out, I don't know. With the loss of Dietrich Mateschitz, it's a different kind of company now, and we've seen that Helmut Marko has lost his main ally in that, and now he's just a bit of a fossil really that's just very out of touch in a lot of areas. So maybe they will just get bought out and become something completely different, but I have no idea what.
Yeah, one thing, like the thing that I have a problem with Red Bull is that I think a lot of this is overblown, but it's still going to end the same way. Like, Ned, you pointed out, like, Newey leaving and everything falling apart, right? That's one thing I disagree with personally, just because I'm like, the reality of what happened there is partly on Newey, but I think the actual, like, falling apart took a little bit longer than everyone thinks. I think the problem is that McLaren actually caught Red Bull, and that pushed Red Bull into a very narrow window to be fast. And then the problem was Newey wasn't there to fix that. It's not that Newey going caused the issue. McLaren caused the issue. It's just, it took Balbo and Vache a lot longer to figure out what the issue was. And by that stage, you're into a point where, well, we can't just change the whole car because it's the last season of a regulation and we're not Ferrari, so why would we change the whole car? Which Ferrari did, stupidly, and ruined themselves. So I think the issue is you don't have Newey around to fix the issue as opposed to the issues caused when Newey leaves, if that makes sense. So I guess we're saying the same thing, just a different version of it, a different storyline of it. And the other thing is, like, Red Bull's actually not that bad right now. It's just that McLaren's done a better job. Like, if we look at this season even, Red Bull are the second fastest car on average over the course of this season. And I know what everyone's going to say, oh, that's just Max Verstappen. He's pulling the car up the grid. No, Max can only drive the car as fast as the fucking car can go. The issue is that you've made a car that is very, very, very difficult to extract performance from. Perhaps Albon is right that it's a car that is particularly suited to his extreme driving style, and therefore you can't get two drivers to drive it. So you're in a situation where you can only go for the Drivers' Championship, right? The problem now is that they're likely going to lose both championships because of that mentality, right? Because you don't have two drivers who can drive the car quick, where they could be beating a lackluster Ferrari and a Mercedes that still isn't quite sure what's going on and why its car is fast. So they're in this weird situation where either way, I think, as Peter said, they are fucked. Because if they lose the championship this year, they're going to get rid of Horner and Verstappen's going to go. And if Verstappen goes this year, they're going to get rid of Horner, and then both will be gone anyway. And if Horner goes, the whole team is fucked because it's going to be run by a board who has no idea how to run an F1 team, clearly. So, yeah, I think regardless what happens, either Verstappen sticks around and Horner gets a stay of execution, and then next year they underperform because everything is against them anyway, so they're going to underperform, and then Horner and Verstappen go and the team is ruined. Or Verstappen leaves this year, Horner goes this year. Basically what I'm saying is, regardless, Red Bull is fucked. It's just a question of, is it this year or next year? Because I think that board is ultimately intent on taking over. And Horner going is way worse for the team than Newey leaving or Verstappen leaving, because it means there's no way back. Because whoever they put in charge will be at the behest of the board. And we've seen how that's worked out for Ferrari, who have unlimited resources, but a board controlling them. And it doesn't work. So I think Red Bull's fucked regardless because the board is intent on taking it over. And clearly it's not Newey leaving that is the issue. It's Rob Marshall, because everything can be traced back to Rob Marshall. As soon as Rob Marshall left, that team fell apart. So I think clearly Rob Marshall is worth more than Newey. I think that's absolute fact. And I hope you clip this up and put it out there somewhere.
If only we had Newey stands in the world, we would have. Yeah,
we do. They're all on this podcast. We're just not very vocal
reactionary.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I think it could be. I think there are two directions that Red Bull might go, and it entirely depends on the kind of sway Horner has. And look, the first direction is as you all have said, it turns into a scenario where the Red Bull board has a lot of power in the way that everything is conducted. And if that is the case, the board tends to have very short-term memory. That's how they tend to work. They work quarter by quarter, and they need results. If the results aren't there, they have this tendency to just make changes and maybe something might stick. If that's the approach they're going to take, then Horner is out. And if Horner is out, the entire senior management is out, because literally the entire thing has been glued together by Horner. And it was on evidence last season as well, when the chat and everything came out. And it was basically the Milton Keynes factory that stood together with Horner when...
Sorry to cut in on that, but that is a perfect point, because just what you're saying is accurate from the simple fact that, like, Jos Verstappen, Helmut Marko, and the entire board, as well as Newey leaving, went against Horner, and yet Horner managed to stay. Like, what other team principal is surviving that? That shows you how much he's holding. Like, the factory is behind him. So you're right. If he leaves, the whole house crumbles. Like, that's it.
And it was reported as well that as soon as the announcement came that Horner was not leaving, the entire factory cheered. And that's, you don't see it with any other team principal or any other team boss in Formula One, any of them, because he's basically been there since 2005, built it from brick to brick. Again, if they stick with Horner and they just give him the kind of control that he's looking for, ideally he wants to be a co-owner. That's what he wants to do when it comes to Red Bull Racing. Whether that will happen or not, we don't know. It depends on the kind of confidence they have in him. If they're sticking with him, I don't have that many... In short term, they are going to struggle because the Red Bull powertrain is going to struggle. That's expected. It's going to be there. But again, according to reports, Mercedes has the best power unit right now. Honda and Audi are close second. Then Ferrari and RBPT are distant in terms of when it comes to performance.
Fucking Ferrari.
Yeah. If it happens. But again, if I'm some driver, if I'm a Charles Leclerc or someone like that, I'll probably bank on a Red Bull, because I know in future if they are on stable footing, they'll be back winning championships because the foundation is strong. All depends on what happens next season. Max is gone. I don't see Max being a Red Bull for the long term, because next season the car is not going to be a championship contender and he'll be done. By 2027, if not 2026, he's gone. If Horner is there, I would still bank on Red Bull being a strong contender. It will start improving. They will go back to the cycle of 2014, but this time around they have control of all the variables compared to what happened in 2014, where the power unit was not in their hands. And once Red Bull has all the variables in their control, they tend to win. They've done it from 2010 to 2013 and even from 2021 to right now.
Sorry, just to rant on, but just to back up on that, like, I do think if they keep Horner and they put full kind of belief in him to do what he's done twice now, bring them to championships over time. Sure. Like, I mean, Red Bull Powertrains has all the ingredients it needs to get to build a good engine. But we've just seen, like, from Honda and even Mercedes in the past, like, it takes time to build that up.
Yeah.
So I just don't think, I know they've been building it since 2022, 2021, like, it's been a while. But it's their first time actually putting it on track.
Yeah.
So it's, to correlate all that and to do everything, it's going to take time. So
at least a year or two is gone. I think you can write off 2026 and probably 2027.
Mark my words, by the way, if that team is taken over by the board, Red Bull Powertrains is sold off to like a Cadillac or a Toyota or someone within months, if not like weeks.
Which is which would be probably the biggest stupidity that any team can do, because Red Bull's biggest problem was the power unit. That's why they went from 2014 till 2020 to not win anything. They ultimately took the call to do everything on their own in-house.
Yeah.
And in the long term, they have the foundation in place to actually make it happen. But if the board is very fidgety and wants results right now, they're not going to happen. And let's see.
It's also, final word on this. Yeah. Do you really think, like, if Horner had left last year, do you really think, like, Verstappen is winning or, like, even fighting for a championship this year and winning last year?
No.
I don't, and I'll tell you why. Because a board is not going to put all of its confidence into a driver. They're not going to go, let's put everything behind this driver, because they'll be like, well, what if the driver leaves in 3 months? We're fucked then. We can't do that. Whereas a team principal like a Horner or Toto can go, no, we're doing this. This is our best chance at winning a championship. A board can't do that. They can't make that gamble. They're risk averse. So
I also think if Horner is hired by Red Bull, the next step is going to be Horner being hired by any of the other 9-10 teams, being given a 33% stake in one of those teams, and then just like we've seen with the whole Pied Piper thing, right? He'll take half the team with him.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going to happen.
So basically what you're saying is Alpine.
Yeah, I mean, Alpine have a vacancy, don't they, for team principal?
And they can sell 24% of the team without issue. No problem.
Yeah, but do you want to work with a shady bastard like Flavio?
Horner does, and I do, definitely. Flavio's a character.
Yeah, shady one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways, moving on from one shady character to a team.
Just a number 4 on a Ferrari caught my eye there. Just I don't know.
So yeah, first of all, the whole thing, the leak that we had last time around with Fred Vasseur's position being in danger. So what's your take on the whole thing, Ned? Do you think there's actually a certain level of credibility to the thing that has actually come out?
What has actually come out? Because I'm not entirely sure what this is.
Okay, so the reports that came out, which was pre-Canadian Grand Prix, where it was 3 things basically. First is that Fred Vasseur has lost the confidence of the board, and he's probably they are lining up a replacement, probably the person who's heading the WEC program right now. Second thing is Charles Leclerc is losing confidence in the team.
Oh, I do remember this now.
Yeah, and third is Lewis is upset because no one is listening to him. So these are the 3 things. So yeah.
Right. So there's a bit to unpack here. Obviously, I wouldn't mind Hamilton going from Ferrari. I wouldn't mind it. So the ideal situation is that this is the thing, because you said that you could get the guy from WEC to come over. I don't remember any I might be completely wrong here. I might be forgetting some big person. But I don't think anyone's ever come over from endurance racing and done anything successful in Formula 1. I think wasn't it FX
Seidel, Andreas Seidel.
Okay, yeah, Seidel, fair enough.
He did bring a team to the midfield, so he could be good at bringing Ferrari to the midfield.
What did you say?
I'm just saying Seidel was very good at bringing McLaren up the midfield, so you could get someone to bring Ferrari back to the midfield where it belongs at the minute. Yeah,
I suppose. It wasn't, as I said, wasn't it FX de Maison, the guy who was at Williams? Wasn't he from endurance racing?
I believe so. Yeah.
I thought you meant drivers at first, and I was like, "What? Giovinazzi's going to Ferrari?" Or are we? I was thinking, it's like, well, in the '60s, Jackie Ickx did a lot of endurance racing first, and then.
Speaking of Giovinazzi, but I think if Leclerc and Hamilton were to both leave, which I don't think Leclerc would be as inclined to leave as Hamilton would be, because he had been in that team for a long time. I know he's fed up and wants to win a championship.
Part of him is dead already,
and he's got nowhere to go as well. So
yeah, because he wouldn't go to Red Bull because we've already established the reasons why. If he was to give that second seat, he just wouldn't. Mercedes are full up. McLaren, to be fair, if Lando keeps performing as he is, I don't think it would be completely out of the blue for him to go to McLaren. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I don't think Lando would go to Ferrari, but can you imagine if Leclerc?
Be good for his mental health.
I think Max kicking Lando out of McLaren sounds very realistic and very very symbolic as well. Actually,
Can you imagine if Leclerc went to McLaren? Can you imagine all the fangirls then? Leclerc and Oscar in the same team.
Jesus.
Choska, they call it, or
God, yeah.
But
Piastri.
Whatever happens with that, if one of them was to leave the team, it just means that Behrman gets promoted to Ferrari earlier, which is all good for me.
Not good for him.
Maybe not, but I think it's better than Haas.
I mean, you're ignoring Ocon there, because I mean, Ocon, I think he's always said he wants, even though he was a Mercedes junior, he'd always wanted to drive for Ferrari.
So Behrman's a Ferrari junior.
Yeah, but Ocon is a.
If you could get Ocon in for 8 races a year, that would be great, because he's really good 8 races a year. He's just shit for the rest of them.
Yeah, the joke didn't land.
Behrman could sort out Hamilton's qualifying issues, because Behrman's been one of the top 5 qualifiers this year. So,
well, Hamilton did say last year if he qualified better, he could have won, but then he qualified better and still ended up not winning. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, the groundhog played a big role, right? So yeah, but again, what's your take on, is it going to happen or not? The Fred Vasseur thing.
Because I've got all the main details now, I can't form a major opinion, but it would be the most Ferrari thing ever for everyone to just leave. So
yeah.
I feel like with the Fred Vasseur thing, it's like Ferrari, even in the past 10 years, have been in worse positions than this, and I'm wondering if maybe everyone's decided the final straw is that Lewis is complaining and not winning. And it's like, no, we can't have Ferrari suffering now. And it's like, well, Charles had to go through this for years. Like, Vettel was making strategies on the fly in a car that was deliberately built kind of was against his own driving style in many ways. Kimi just didn't exist there. It was just completely ignored. Yeah. Like they've been useless for a long time. This didn't just start under Fred. And again, for last year, it was shaky at points, but towards the second half of the season, it was really good, and they had breakout races in Kota and Monza and wherever else. It hasn't happened yet, but it might. But for the time being, they're just not going anywhere really.
Yeah, Jason.
Just like, what's the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. They've changed their team principle since 2013. How many times is this? A 7th team principle? There's Mattiacci...
5th or 6th.
Right, okay. So
Domenicali,
I'm not going to go.
Mattiacci, Arrivabene, Binotto,
and Vasseur.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
5.
Compared to 0 changes for Red Bull and Mercedes.
Yeah.
And look
and
who's
Red
winning.
Bull and Mercedes have been, interestingly, the 2 teams to win all the championships in those years. So it just, like, removing Vasseur just isn't a good idea. The problem is, it just goes back to what I was saying about Red Bull. Until they put full faith in the team to actually build itself and like say to Vasseur, right, look, you have 5 years, go crazy, build the team up. Until they do that, as long as the board is every 3 months going, well, actually, we've got results coming up and you're not doing great, so can we just change something? Like, as long as that goes on, you're just not going to win a championship. And it just, the board has run the Ferrari team since 2007, essentially. Like, realistically, as soon as John Todd was leaving, that was it, really. I know they won 1 championship under Stefano, but really that was just the leftovers of John Todd. Like, let's be honest here. So I don't know. Ferrari just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And then it's constantly just, they have to do the blame game. It's either the drivers or the team principal. It's never anything else. It's never anything else. Like, when they weren't winning before, it's Vettel's fault. It's like, no, like, Vettel didn't win 2017 and 2018 because he was driving for Ferrari, a team that mentally destroys you and mentally turns you into Lando Norris. So, like, it's just going to be impossible for them to win. So, and like, Hamilton coming to the team, like, what was the point of that apart from just spending a load of money on a driver who wasn't going to be an improvement over Sainz? So it's just bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. So, yeah, like, there was a point to this rant. I don't think they'll remove Fred Vasseur this year. I think they will remove him for next year if they don't win the championship this year, which is a completely pointless and ridiculous thing to do because they weren't going to win the championship this year regardless because McLaren made a big step. They should have been ahead of Ferrari, though. That's the thing that should hang over.
Ahead of Ferrari?
Or sorry, yes, they should have been ahead of where Ferrari are now. That actually is a factual statement. They should have been ahead of Red Bull, is what I meant to say. Like, there's no reason for them not to be beating Red Bull right now.
Yeah. It's basically the US presidential term, right? 4 years and you're done. They gave Arrivabene 4 years, basically from 2015 till 2019, 2015 to 2018, then he was chucked out. 19, 20, 21, 22 for Binotto, and then he was gone. And now Vasseur is currently in his 3rd season, and by next season he will be out as well.
It's even more close than that because, like America, it doesn't matter who you put in charge. For some reason, you still end up bombing.
Yeah.
So
it's bombing the
very
Middle East.
similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are Ferrari bombing the Middle East?
They're bombing at least. They're bombing something.
I'm trying to think that what their results are like in Abu Dhabi and Qatar, and
Ferrari, much like America, bombing in the Middle East. Since 2003. Actually, because in Abu Dhabi they did bomb in 2012, 2010. Yeah.
They haven't won any of those races recently, have they? But
no.
Red Bull have won basically everything, and McLaren recently. So
yeah. Or Mercedes. You can go back like since 2010. It's I think
the Germans were always quite successful in the Middle East, though.
Yeah.
Same with the British. Always quite good in the Middle East.
Yeah. Coming back to this.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think 2025 he's going to stick around. Fred Vasseur is probably not going because the way both Lewis and Leclerc, they've kind of rallied around Fred Vasseur. They're going to have some confidence. Okay, let's just keep him for this season. Next season, I think almost, if there's one prediction everyone can make, it's basically that Ferrari is going to be dog shit when it comes to every other team. And yeah, Pretty much the power unit, and it's basically the Ferrari insider that was there in the race. He kind of revealed that Mercedes and Audi are supposed to have the best. Audi is a big surprise, but apparently Mercedes and Audi are supposed to have a strong engine, and then you have
the thing you can be sure that Ferrari, but you can be sure that Ferrari has a shit engine, because if Ferrari had an even relatively decent engine, you'd hear 5 magazines out of Maranello being like, we're going to win the next 7 years of championships.
Yeah.
And they're all very quiet at the minute and like, yeah, we're not really sure about it. So it's dog shit. Like,
exactly.
It's really bad.
It's precisely. And once that happens, Fred Vasseur is gone. Because look, they don't make smart calls, and John Elkann is not a person who's known to make smart calls. I mean, if you look at the stuff he's done off the F1 track, let's just put it that way. But yeah,
it's Matt from P1 I feel sorry for in all of this, to be honest.
Why?
Leclerc Ferrari fan.
I mean, that's never good for your health, isn't it? But yeah, I agree. I think by 2026, my prediction was that I think Fred Vasseur is gone. And I'm pretty sure Leclerc will be done by then. If he isn't done by then you have to. Then he's foolish. Basically, he's foolish. He doesn't have the even a slight bit of cognitive ability to know that in Formula One, you don't win with Ferrari after spending 9 years.
Can I ask a question? Actually, the entire group here. Does anyone here think Leclerc could win a championship at Ferrari?
No.
No, okay.
I'll go one step further. I don't think any driver on the current grid could win a championship with Ferrari.
But
as simple
what
as
about all those people last year? Because there were thousands of them excited for Hamilton to go to a serious team. Like what?
I think they were convinced he was going to win because him and Fred Vasseur did GP2 together.
Yes.
Like, they know each other. So yeah. And I mean, when there was the uncertainty with Adrian Newey leaving, and I was just like, please, anywhere but Ferrari. Like, and he had Aston Martin, so yeah.
Let's see what happens with him. Coming to the Ferrari drivers, by the way, how do you think we've seen how the first 10 races have kind of gone? How do you think the rest of it goes? The rest 14 races per se between Lewis and Charles.
Kind of like it is at the moment, I guess, just because, I mean, so far Lewis has beaten Charles in the sprint race in China, which doesn't count because it's a sprint race.
And that's not just you saying that. Lewis Hamilton himself said sprint races don't count. So that...
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone said, Alonso said they don't count, and yeah, no one wants them, so yeah. But yeah, they don't count. And then Imola, where he got yet another free pit stop or free safety car, when Leclerc himself had pulled a blinder strategy-wise and was on course for a podium until said safety car came along. But other than that, yeah, it's been Charles beating him every time. So there might be the odds.
No one saw that coming, right? We definitely didn't all call that last year.
Yeah. There might be a race or two later on where he does beat him on pace or whatever, but yeah.
Silverstone, maybe.
Yeah. The podium, the one podium of the season at Silverstone is already written in the stars.
Yeah, and then he'll be like, this is the turning point, this is where everything gets good for Ferrari, and then like Mercedes last year, it'll drop again. Yeah, until Leclerc gets banned at Spa and he gets a free win or something. Yeah.
By the way, the last couple of races, Leclerc and Lewis have been very close in qualifying. It's just been a 10th between the two overall.
That's usually been because there hasn't. Wasn't it in Spain that Leclerc didn't do a final run, and then in Canada?
Yeah, I'm discounting that in terms of until.
Oh, you're
Q2.
A Hamilton fan now.
I mean, someone has to
discounting results that don't go in your favor. Are you a Hamilton or Verstappen fan now?
Yeah, I'm doing basically what's the term? Grifting. Just like Peter Windsor is now a Max Verstappen fan and not Lewis Hamilton. So I thought maybe someone has to.
I just after USF1, I just can't take it. Yeah, after USF1, for me to take anything Peter Windsor says about F1 is difficult. You know, you couldn't even get your team to the grid. I don't think you're probably the best insight into success.
Yeah. So let's talk about Peter Windsor.
Says the bald Formula One podcaster. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so let's talk about Peter Windsor's wild claim, because I found it wild. Other people didn't. Well, they were Verstappen fans. Yeah. So according to Peter Windsor, Max Verstappen will eat Oscar Piastri alive if he was driving a McLaren.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. because this is the thing. When it comes to raw pace, I'd say that at their peaks, I'd say Max is probably about maybe a tenth and a half quicker than Oscar in both qualifying and race trim. But the thing is, Max will make maybe one, maybe two major errors per year. Whether it be what happened in Spain, whether it be just like I think it was like 2023, he had Australia where he went off, but he still won the race by about 30 seconds. Those kind of things. Whereas Oscar, don't get me wrong, he's had less errors than Lando Norris. But saying you've had less errors than Lando Norris is like saying that you have you've got less hair loss than Jason. It's not really an achievement.
Good job.
Thanks, man.
Good job.
I was trying to think of an analogy, and I just saw you there.
And
so
it was just a bald-faced one staring at you.
Yeah. But you get what I mean. Like, he's had multiple errors this season, and he would over the course of a season, like in terms of overall, as I said, at his peak, he wouldn't get eaten. But as I say, you spin out.
That's exactly my
like
point.
In Australia, that's 20 points. You make an error in qualifying and only make it back up to third or second. That's another 7 or 10 points. Over the course of a season, he'll lose by about maybe 75, 100 points over a season to Max.
I don't know though, because by his third season, Ricciardo was still beating Verstappen. So
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
Have you looked at the stats?
Yeah, the third season for Ricciardo.
2018.
No, Ricciardo's third season was 2017. No, it was 2015. Sorry.
2013 was his third season in F1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Verstappen wasn't beating Ricciardo then.
No, because he was still.
Yeah,
I'm going to sit this one out.
The statement I made was perfectly accurate.
Okay.
Of course, it makes no sense, but it was perfectly accurate.
Okay.
So when when the whole thing is said that he'll be eating him alive, it's basically having the same dynamics that he has at Red Bull right now with his teammates. That's what I'm talking about.
No, not if
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, okay. If Piastri was in the Red Bull, perhaps. But if Verstappen had moved to
At McLaren,
yeah, then no. I don't think it would be that much of a domination. I think it would be very close. Yeah. I think Max would be winning, but I think it would be very close.
I think it would be something similar to the Lewis Rosberg Championship in 2015.
I actually think it would be very close to the Oscar Lando Championship of this year.
No, I look again. I think Max.
I think
wins.
that's how close
he wins it. He wins it handily. But I don't think we have a scenario where it's dominant in the sense that he's 6 or 7 tenths faster than Oscar in qualifying or stuff like that. It's basically a tenth or so between the two, because that's the level at which these elite drivers kind of operate. And once
the way Mezzo just summed it up there is kind of how I feel, to be honest. But he started
with multiple races to go. That's the thing.
Yeah, he wins. Yeah. He wins the championship. I agree with it. I agree with that. But I don't think it's going to be like a one-sided thing. I think there's going to be
Piastri now go on like a 4 championship run, and we're like, is he the best driver since Schumacher?
Probably not. But yeah. Anyways,
Peter did. What do you think? Sorry, I think I cut over.
If they beat with those two, Max wins. I mean, I think it's more like maybe 2014 than 15, because 15 was a complete walkover for Lewis, but 14 it was mostly close and it went down to the wire just, but it was in Lewis's favour, and the on track battles we usually went Lewis's way. Because, Piastri, he's fine in that, he's fast and controlled and very dependable. But Max, at least once a year, he has these standout moments where you're just like, nobody else could have done that, usually in the rain. And we haven't really had that yet with Oscar. We've had, that's good for the driver in their second or third season, but nothing, no, just utter, demolition of everyone else.
Yeah.
This is something that drives me up the wall when people talk about second and third seasons. I don't actually get this whole thing, because I think only since Oscar and Lando and Co have come into play has second or third season really people really started talking about it. Because don't get me wrong, I like to bash Hamilton. We all like to bash Hamilton, but he was winning championships in his second season.
How old was Hamilton in his first season?
What do you say? Yeah, exactly.
But also, he had the fastest car in his first season.
How old was Hamilton?
And he
in his
lost
first
the championship in the fastest car.
He was 22.
Yeah, and he came in Lewis was probably one of the most well-prepared driver, groomed throughout his career in terms of a rookie.
But he also lost the championship in the fastest car.
Yeah, again by 1 point.
What I'm saying is when it comes to the true greats, whether it be Hamilton, whether it be Vettel, Schumacher, all those guys, Verstappen even, by their third season, they have already shown why they are going to be a future champion. If not, they're maybe like one season off, or they've shown glimpses.
So was Oscar, though, right?
But it's not. I don't think it's at that same level. I don't think it's at that same level that it was for Hamilton, Vettel.
I agree.
I don't know, though. I don't know if it's a fair comparison, though, because I think all of those drivers, like the reason, like if Verstappen had started his career right in a similar vein to, say, a Leclerc or a George in like a backmarker team, essentially, like. I know he did technically start in Toro Rosso, but I mean, he was there. Well, Leclerc as well was moved up very quickly, right?
Yeah.
So let's say a George Russell. He was held in the back like a George Russell. It's much harder to show what you can do in those situations.
But maybe you could argue that the reason why George was held back because although yes, George had shown a lot of potential, there wasn't. If George had I'm not saying win races in the Williams he was in because that wasn't physically possible, but if he'd have shown the performances he showed in 2021, for example, in 2019 or 2020, they would have promoted him.
Couldn't we say
George
that
did. In 2020 he almost won in his first.
But couldn't we say the same thing about Piastri? Because Piastri came into the first season in a really shit McLaren, couldn't show anything. In his second season, he won races. And in his third,
he won the sprint and scored multiple podiums, right, in his first season.
Sure, and he also but also then in his and that was in a relatively shit car, and then in his second season, I know it got better by the end of the season, which is when they started performing. Yeah. But in his second season, he won races. In his third season, he's now leading the championship. So all of it kind of correlates to where the car is, and his learning curve is very quick. And I think if you compare that to a Leclerc or Verstappen, it's very similar.
I won't say that. I think there's one difference here, and the difference is what Max did in. I think what stood out for Max was the 2016 Brazilian Grand Prix in the wet, where it's just stunning. That kind of performances you don't see from an Oscar. From Charles, again, what stood out was his race in I'm forgetting, it was Baku or something in a Sauber, where it was just brilliant. And from Baku onwards, almost every race he was just doing the giant killing stuff in the kind of car that he had. And again, for Charles in his second race with Ferrari. He put it on pole. He was, I think, second or third youngest pole position, right? You don't see... Again, I think we've talked about it earlier as well. What Oscar has shown is he needs time to get up to pace, and maybe that has something to do with the ground effect cars. What Max and Charles showed, they showed pace quite early in their F1 careers. Consistency came a bit later. For Oscar, consistency has been there, but the pace has come a bit later. This season is the one where we are probably seeing the true pace.
I have something to say on that, but I know Peter had a point to make there, so go ahead.
In George's case specifically, I think the issue is that he impressed too much because, Claire has admitted that she basically vetoed him going to Mercedes in 2021 because he was her greatest asset. And also, if you believe the conspiracy theories about Sakia 2020, which I absolutely do, then basically they were like, well, he might shit all over Lewis, and Lewis doesn't want that, and we don't want that, so let's just hold him back for a bit and keep Bottas here being kind of half and half.
I mean, they've done it, right? In 2019, Ocon was supposed to be given the seat with Lewis because in their simulators and in the testing that he had done, he was faster than Bottas. That was there. The data had there. They didn't do that because Toto didn't want a repeat of what happened with Rosberg. He didn't want to put another driver and have a complete, you can say, implosion within the team. He wanted a safe wingman and Lewis doing the job. Then when George came in, ultimately he had to let Ocon go to Renault. And then when George came in, George also impressed, and George was actually quicker than Ocon in the simulators. He could have been put in at Mercedes by 2020. They didn't do that for one very simple reason, because they just wanted to keep a stable balance in place.
I personally think the biggest issue here is the comparison. I think that's what throws off Oscar. Because like when you have Max Verstappen, you're talking about him against a Ricciardo who was very highly rated at the time, right? So obviously that, I mean, I know Ricciardo hasn't been since, but at the time, incredibly high rated driver.
Ricciardo was the best driver in Formula 1 in 16 and 14.
Like 10 years ago.
I'm telling you.
But no, I mean, to be fair, 10 years ago, Ricciardo was the next big star. He just was, because Max hadn't really got into a rhythm yet.
And then Leclerc is fighting against a Vettel. We all know how good Vettel was and is, well, you know, for a long time. And then you've got Oscar. The problem is he's fighting against a Lando. But the problem with that is, this is what I was going to make as my point is, the reason we don't see, like, Oscar's not rated so highly is because he's like, yeah, but I mean, look at how Lando was beating him. But it's like, but we all know in pure pace terms, Lando is one of the quickest drivers on the grid.
Yeah, so, but the thing
is, he's beating Lando on pace now.
Yeah, I get your point. The thing is, when it came to Max was competitive against Daniel, and there were days where Daniel could not touch Max. From 16, 17, and in 18, it was just a done deal. When it came to Charles as well, from in 19 as well, as soon as the partnership began, there were days where Seb could not touch Charles. Last season and the year before that, Oscar did not have those kind of races where Lando was just nowhere close to him. Maybe once or twice in Monaco, probably. But other than that, you couldn't really you couldn't string together races where you could say that Oscar was definitively the faster driver at McLaren.
Yeah, he was. And you could say there was a couple of drivers where Lando was, for example, that driver on Oscar.
In qualifying, it was 24. I mean, that's as one-sided as it gets, and that's why maybe you see that. Maybe Oscar has finally reached it. Maybe it has to do with the ground effect era, because that takes time to maybe get used to and to maybe grow into a different driver. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, Lewis clearly doesn't like ground effect as an example. It's gonna.
He doesn't like the car that is less than fastest, it seems.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's also this thing that we this applies mostly to Red Bull drivers. We hear so much about people saying, "Oh, the car doesn't suit my driving style," and it's like it's weird because 5-10 years ago you switch between midfield teams, and it's like it's not really any different. But also 30 years ago, people didn't say the car doesn't suit my driving style; they would say the car is just really bad. It's not a case of it's refined and do this. It's like no, it just doesn't work because it's been really badly built.
Yeah.
But now it's like, why can't you adapt to it? Like, you have to be able to do that. And for drivers who've been across several different eras of technical regs, you think they should be able to do that, but they can't anymore with ground effect, it seems.
Yeah.
To be fair, one of my really unpopular opinions is that Lewis's form that he showed from 2022 onwards was basically the same as, especially in 21, was basically the same. It's just that his errors and his problems as a driver were masked by the fact he was in the fastest car in 19 and 20. And
I've said that.
Yeah. I mean, in all the seasons,
that's an unpopular opinion on YouTube and Twitter, by the way, but not in this podcast.
In all the seasons when he lost the championship, you can point to at least one driver error from himself that would have cost him that title.
Yeah.
Imola 21.
Even a lot of people talk about 2018, right? And you go through the 2018 season, you see races, okay, here Bottas was quicker, here he made an error, here this is wrong, here he's not maximized it, and there are far too many races, and people consider 2018 his best season.
I don't like
that.
I got so much hate because I did a video ranking his Mercedes seasons, and obviously Hamilton fans, because algorithm, they'll go on that and they'll say, "Oh, you're giving him so much hate," and it's like, sorry, pointing out that sometimes he crashes into people, and a lot of the time he gets free safety cars is not hate; it's just facts.
Factually accurate.
I think I counted
Imola 2021.
That's the thing. I think because I got hate for this on my own their own podcast, that I counted I think at least 20 races where it's like you can legitimately say he doesn't deserve that victory, and he got it for free because of mechanical failures from other people, or because the safety car came at exactly the right time for him. No one else has that many. Yes, you did. Yeah, I mean, I did also list races he should have won but didn't. But there's considerably less of them.
That's the bigger problem. Because you had around a list of 30 races which Lewis got lucky and won, and there were around 10 races where he was unlucky. So like, what the fuck is going on?
And it's like, so all things balanced, he shouldn't really have more wins than Michael.
Another stat is that I was. This is for a video that I will be putting out in the future where I'm going to compare Lewis and Max's racecraft. Lewis Hamilton has more incidents with other drivers than he does race wins.
Oh, 103.
Well, it's 105. It's 105 in total wins he has now.
Oh yeah,
It's
yes,
about
105 now.
107,
Sorry.
109. It's about 107. This does include a couple of things like impeding in qualifying. It's technically
Also, the other thing is that very few of those are him crashing and ending the race, because usually when he damages his car, it gets faster for some reason. Except in Canada, that's the only time the groundhog took him down. But he was more upset about killing that groundhog than he was about sending Max to hospital in Silverstone and that.
And we have the clip to start the podcast off right there.
Yeah.
I will also provide balance, because Max Verstappen also has more instances with other drivers when he does race wins. So
What? Seriously?
they're both as bad as each other.
I just, the amount of Verstappen fans, by the way, I heard like over the last couple of seasons where, for example, with Antonelli, they're like, oh, well, he's throwing it away or whatever. You can't do that in your rookie season. I'm like, has anyone watched Verstappen's early career? Like, what are you talking about? Like, every driver has these wild incidents in their first couple of seasons. It's normal.
I mean, the only point of note in 2015 was that was when he defied team orders in Singapore, and they were like, "Oh, this is great because it shows commitment and mental strength or whatever." Okay.
By the way, this is also one of the things. I think Vettel would have done the same thing. I think Hamilton would have done the same thing. I think Alonso would have done the same thing. I don't think Kimi Antonelli does it.
No.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, you mean ignoring team orders?
Yeah.
Being so mentally self-secure that he's like, this is my team, things are going to go my way, and that's it.
It depends on who his teammate is. If his teammate was, let's say, if he'd gone to Williams this season already, because there were rumours he was going to go to Williams last year. Yeah. If his teammate was an Albon, or maybe not a Sainz, but if it was like a Sargent, he'd be like, no, fuck off.
Yes, again, has he shown that kind of streak, that mean streak in him? Kimi.
Well, I think because his comparison is George Russell, the second best driver on the grid.
No, not only now. Earlier in his career as well. Earlier in his career as well, Kimi has been very. It might be a very weird comparison, but Kimi Antonelli and the way he's breezed through the junior series, it's actually quite similar to the way Lando went through. Because Lando dominated in karting. He went through, I think he won GP3 or F3, one of the two. And he was quickly in Formula 2 where he lost to George, but George was like 4 or 5 years older than him. And once you're that much older, he was kind of discounted. It was like, okay, fine. You still finished second, and then he came into Formula 1. At no point has Lando Norris, before maybe last season or this season, been in an intense championship battle or a dogfight. Before that, he basically breezed through almost everyone. He dominated everyone. I think that's where the whole thing is kind of coming to roost for him, because that's the grooming that he's not had. While Leclerc, George, Albon, Max, Ocon, Gasly, they were at each other's throats throughout their young career, throughout their formative years, and now you can see it in the way they race. And they don't really, they aren't really bothered about, okay, we made contact, fine, we did. And you can see in the way, the F3 championship between Max and Ocon, they made contact almost every lap when they were battling for the lead. And that's the kind of close racing they've been through, while Lando dominated and just went through and came in. And I think Kimi also has something similar, because he's basically breezed through the whole thing.
I've always had a degree of skepticism with drivers who either come from loads of money or have had loads of backing, because it just streamlines everything so much in your ascension. But Antonelli, he's kind of hard to read. It's weird because he's so extremely positive, but also so kind of infantile, even though we've had 18-year-olds in F1 before. Because, Behrman is only a year older than him, but Behrman comes across a lot more mature. Max, when he was 17 in F1, he wasn't this like ball of positive energy. He was obviously the playground bully, and that
he was.
And Antonelli is just happy all the time, and he has this sort of childlike dream state mantra of everything. And he's still at school as well, and he's racing in Formula 1. It's taking his classmates to bringing them to races or whatever. And you can tell that he's gonna be a good boy and be like, yes sir, and I'll do this and all that in the team, and just. Yeah. There's no toughness there, because again in his career, because his dad is a racing driver and a very successful one, so he's been groomed for this since he was a kid, and he has just had this really easy run, because he runs his own karting team, as well, and he's 18. Like it's completely built around you. Whereas Max had that because yes, it was he's been groomed for this, but groomed in like an abusive kind of tormented way, not in a like everything's fine and sunshine and rainbows kind of way. Like
that's if you need one person to tell you what not to do in Formula One, Jos Verstappen has done all of those things, so he's able to teach you how to fail in F1. The new Jos Verstappen book.
I don't get how employable he was, though. Like, there isn't a 90s team he didn't test for. It's just ridiculous. Like, he's like De Cesaris, but marginally better.
I mean, a lot is said about Jos that his career kind of got derailed when he was teamed up with Michael, but he had a lot of opportunities where he could have actually come back. But it seems that once the first impression was pretty poor, you don't really come back from that. Maybe that's what happened with him.
Well, it was Brazil '94. Was it Irvine that caused that shunt? But that was the one. He was the big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say I have a hard out in 15. So do we want to jump on to Australia predictions? Because otherwise, I think
Austria
predictions. Sorry, because otherwise I know the three of us will argue about.
And I also have to go. Yeah.
Okay. So let's.
So yeah,
just like Jos Verstappen, we all have a hard out. So let's jump on to.
Good job. Okay, Austrian Grand Prix. First of all, what's your? So there's no rain predicted. I think the last time I checked, and tires are slightly harder compared to what we had. Not harder. They're basically bucking the trend that they had until the last race, where they brought a step softer. This is more on the same lines that we had last season. So what's your expectation in terms of the pecking order? What do you expect, Ned?
I think McLaren are obviously going to be top of the pile. I think that's one thing we can seal off to start with. Whether it's going to be Lando or Oscar.
Do you know Ferrari is bringing an upgrade? How can you discount?
Yeah, that'll put them first. Right, Ferrari at the top then. No, we're not doing that. McLaren will be first. In terms of teams, I go McLaren. I think Mercedes will run the high from Canada. Potentially, at least with George. I'm not sure if because Austria's quite a track that's been involved in the junior category, so maybe Kimi will keep up his streak because he's finally starting to get to grips with that car. Then I think it'll be Red Bull. Then I think it'll be Ferrari. Williams need to come back from whatever that's happened in their last couple of races. So I'd hope that they can do so. Sauber have been on the up. I think they could easily be the fifth best team. Haas just depends on whether Ocon and Damon will turn up, not whether the car is good. Because I think the car's been pretty the same level throughout the entire season, maybe apart from Australia. It's just that Ocon pulls out an amazing performance in qualifying, then Damon pulls out an amazing performance in qualifying, and it's just those two have been basically dragged.
Is it just me or his voice just went?
No, his mic went underwater again.
Yeah.
What did you miss?
There we go. No, it's back.
It's Haas, so nothing significant. So.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what I think will happen with Haas.
Okay, keep it to top 5. Keep it to top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5 drivers.
No one cares about Haas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Top 5 drivers in the race. I'm going to say
top
Piastri,
5 teams. Wait. Top 5 teams first. The pecking order.
Top 5 teams, right?
Yeah.
Okay. McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, Sauber.
Okay. Peter.
Yeah, I think. Well, my base kind of prediction / assumption for every weekend is that McLaren will be fastest because other than Canada, that's been the case. And you're just going to have the odd weekend where Mercedes and more often Red Bull is Red Bull, Max is the standout that beats them.
Jeddah, Red Bull were technically fastest.
Jeddah, Imola.
Yeah, well, again, Max was fastest, not Red Bull.
I mean, he could only drive the car as fast as the car can go.
But no, at this point, I try to just pretend that Tsunoda doesn't exist because he either qualifies last or gets a penalty and starts last. And so just ignore him. He doesn't need to be there. But again, Austria is one of Max's strongest tracks. It's Red Bull's fortress. It's their Fiorano. He always does well here, so I think he'll be at a minimum on the podium and pushing for a win. It's a good circuit, and so people always do well here. Ferrari, they bring an upgrade, but then Charles is okay here. This is one of Lewis's weakest circuits, if you look at his record. So I'm not expecting any miracles on his side. But like Nedzo, But then there's another thing is that he. I made this point again in one of our own episodes that when it comes to champions in general, and you look at their very best races, a lot of the time it happens in the seasons where they don't win the championship or don't have the best car. But then when you look at Lewis, it's like, how many standout races has he had since 2022? Like almost none, basically. Or he's had 2 wins where the win just kind of rolled onto his lap, and that it's
the British bias on this podcast is just getting out of hand.
But other than that, I mean, I am like Nedzo. I'm kind of transitioning into a Sauber enjoyer because they
because of Hülkenberg.
Yeah, suddenly they're doing something. I mean, I don't give a toss about Bortoleto, but if they can score some points and actually be in the least bit interesting, that will be an upgrade over last year.
This is insane. So this on this podcast where we've brought 2 British people on, the 2 British people are backing up the Germans. This is ridiculous.
Things change.
Yeah. maybe if the Germans had worked a little bit harder. Anyway, yeah. I the one thing I will say is I think the Red Bull is going to be fastest here. I think the Red Bull has faster straight line speed, which makes up for a lot around this track. So I think that
the
Max
final section is also it's fast speed sections, right? The sector 3.
I think the McLarens will make it back there through those high speed sections. I think the McLaren and the turns will be quicker.
Quite good when it comes to those.
Shouldn't
Suzuka,
this be a proper
Jeddah.
test? Because we had the technical directive in Spain to get rid of the flexi wings, which it turns out didn't really do anything other than possibly make McLaren even faster. Do you think a circuit like this, which is just made of straights, that it really would show up if the straight line speed differential?
Maybe. I just think that in tracks like these where there's a lot of straight lines, it seems like the Red Bull's been quickest, just generally speaking, in the straights. And then, as you said, casual, like in the high-speed corners, if we look at Jeddah and Suzuka, those are the 2 tracks where... and Imola as well, like the 2 or 3 tracks where the Red Bull has at least been basically on par with the McLaren, if not faster in Jeddah, for example, and Imola potentially as well. Yeah, so I think it's going to be Red Bull fastest. Obviously, only one driver can drive that Red Bull at the minute, so that's a max fastest, basically. I think the McLaren straight after that. I don't think Ferrari will exist as usual, so I think it'll be Mercedes 4th, Mercedes 3rd, Williams 4th, Ferrari 5th.
Oh, yeah. I think it will be very close between McLaren and Red Bull. I think the problem that Red Bull might face is that it's rear limited to a large extent. So, is it rear limited or is it front limited?
No, there's not that many traction zones, right? So it's front limited.
Austria, yeah, it's more of a front limited track comparatively.
Yeah.
Because tires are going to play a role here. Again, will they or will they not? If they aren't a big factor and tire degradation is not huge, we might see... Because last year we had a 2-stopper. So it was a 2-stopper last year already. So yeah, it's going to be a battle between Max and Lando and Oscar. It's not a sprint race weekend this time around, so that's a change. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. The sprint at Austria just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work. Yeah.
It's not fun. Again, McLaren, Red Bull probably on par. I think Mercedes will be 3rd, Ferrari will be 4th. Maybe Aston Martin 5th, but I'm not sure because Aston has been... Alonso. Alonso has been getting comparatively, more and more competitive in the last few races. He also scored points in Canada. I'll go with Aston Martin as the 5th fastest team. So yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
So what are we saying then in terms of actual predictions?
Top predictions. Net.
Yeah.
Oh, is it top 3 or top 5?
Top 3.
Okay. I'm gonna say Oscar 1st, Max 2nd, Lando 3rd.
You have a lot of confidence in Lando.
Now Lando's gonna bin it, and who's gonna get that podium instead? Not Tsunoda.
So we're not no one's going for a Tsunoda win, right? Anyway, sorry.
Peter.
Yeah, Max wins, then Oscar, and then George.
Yeah, George won the race last time around.
And he's been just super consistent. And I mean, at the moment, he's kind of my driver of the season, I think, as well.
Mine's Colapinto, but sadly he's not going to be on the podium. So
No.
You never know, a crash here, a crash there, or safety car there. So.
yeah, but he's driving an Alpine. He'll be the one crashing.
He might crash into the podium if it's a big enough shunt, but that's not the way of
He'll have
getting
to get
on
quite
it.
a bit of lift.
Yeah.
He'll have to do a Yos in Imola.
In my circuit video, I said Alpine Mountain when talking about Red Bull Ring instead of Alpine Mountain because I've been so conditioned now to
Welcome
do
to
that.
the Alpine Mountains. Yeah. Christian Horner has just moved to Alpine. Yeah.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah.
Oh, my brain says it's going to be Max, Oscar, George, but I don't want to say that because that's boring. Actually, George isn't boring in that one. It should be Max, Oscar, Lando.
The
I'm
top
gonna
three
say
that you want, top three that you want to be, and top three that would be. So go for
the top three I want it to be is George, Max, Leclerc, just because that really gets everything going again for the championship.
So make
the top
it
three
Leclerc, Kimi,
Leclerc, George. No,
and
Kimi's
McLaren,
not in this.
double DNF.
No, McLaren's not in, or Kimi's not in this. It's Leclerc, George, Max is what it should be. No, I think it's going to be Max win, Oscar second. Fuck it, I'll put George third. Yeah, why not? Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think Max wins. I think the pace would be there, and plus it's Red Bull Ring. They kind of pull things out of the bag.
Is what you're saying? Yeah.
I mean, they won in 2018 and 2019 as well when the car was not that good. Who will be second? Okay, let's go with Lando because Lando is 7-1 up in qualifying here. But again, it doesn't matter because. But yeah, still okay. Let's go with Lando. Third. Yeah, I think third Oscar. Very safe, but yeah, I think it's going to be Max, Lando, Oscar. That's the top three. Which sucks, but yeah, that's where it's going to be. I think Mercedes is probably not going to be as good here. They haven't been as good compared to Canada, but they'll be still decent enough. Ferrari is going to suck ass like they have most of the time. So yeah.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
On that, thank you. Thanks everyone for watching. If any of you are from Peter and Ned's channel, just subscribe, drop a comment, tell us from where you are, and yeah, good job. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good one. Don't forget to subscribe to Peter and Ned, by the way, if you haven't already. But if you're here, you probably already have. Bye, everybody. Bye.